My stepmom said, "I'm holding on to your first paycheck, you'll thank me one day." 6 hours later, my bank account had exactly $12 left. That night, I found my signature on a power of attorney form I never signed. When I played the recording at the reconciliation dinner, the room went silent. I don't need to destroy this family. I just need to show them the rules are written by me. My name is Claire Rivera. I'm 29 years old, and for the first time in my life, I thought I was winning. The bar exam results had come in 2 weeks prior. Passed. That single word on a web page was the culmination of 3 years of brutal, mind-numbing, soul-crushing work. It was 3 years of living in a cramped, damp studio apartment in Lakefield, subsisting on instant ramen and the stale coffee from the law library vending machine. 3 years of saying no to friends, no to sleep, no to anything that wasn't highlighting a case brief. Arden Pike Legal Services, a small but hungry firm, had hired me contingent on passing. My first official paycheck a direct deposit, not a grand sum by New York standards, but enough to make me breathe for the first time in 36 months, had landed in my Northbridge Mutual checking account that very morning. $4,800. The number looked holy. I was driving home to Northbridge, the suburb I had fled. My 2012 sedan, the one that smelled faintly of burning oil, felt out of place as I exited the highway. Lakefield was concrete and noise. Northbridge was manicured lawns, silent judgment, and houses big enough to house 3 families, yet occupied by 2 people and a lot of secrets. My stepmother, Marissa Vale, had called. Her voice, smooth as poisoned honey, had spilled through the receiver. "Claire, darling, we heard the news. Your father and I are just bursting with pride. You must come home this weekend. We're having a little dinner, just family, to celebrate you." The lie was so obvious. I should have seen it from a mile away. But that tiny, stupid, hopeful part of me, the part that still wanted a family, a father, clung to the words, "Celebrate you." So I drove the 90 minutes, the paycheck notification glowing in my mind. I practiced my smile. I practiced how I would describe my new job, how I would graciously accept their congratulations. I felt the crisp linen of the new blazer I'd bought my first lawyer purchase. I was Claire Rivera, Esquire. I was an adult. I was no longer the help. The house was blazing with light, and it was packed. Cars lined both sides of the street, not the usual neighborhood sedans, but gleaming black Audis and Range Rovers I didn't recognize. A knot tightened in my stomach. This wasn't a little dinner. I walked up the slate path, the one I used to have to weed every Saturday. I opened the front door, the heavy oak door my father, Howard, was so proud of. The sound hit me first, not the quiet clink of family dinner, but the roar of a full-blown party, champagne flutes, laughter. A caterer's uniformed staff bustling by with trays of hors d'oeuvres. My stomach dropped, and then I saw the banner. It was strung up across the grand fireplace, where my baby pictures used to be before Marissa redecorated. It was professionally printed in sweeping gold script. "Congratulations, Tessa Kellen, on your engagement. Tessa, my half-sister, the golden child, the one Marissa had been grooming for a life of wealthy leisure since she was born, and Kellen Rhodes, of the Rhodes Developments, a family so wealthy they practically owned the zip code. This wasn't my party. I wasn't the guest of honor. I was, as I had always been, a prop." "Claire, you made it?" Marissa materialized from the crowd. She looked stunning. Of course. Her blonde hair was a perfect, expensive cascade. She was wearing a silk sheath dress that probably cost more than my first month's rent. She gripped my arm, her nails digging in slightly, her smile a perfect, terrifying mask. "Isn't it wonderful?" she gushed, steering me away from the living room, toward the small alcove by the mudroom. Her voice was loud enough for the nearby guests to hear her performance. "My baby girl, engaged, and you, a lawyer. It's just too much good news for one family." She cornered me, her back to the party, her eyes fixed on me. The smile vanished, replaced by a look of brisk transaction. "Honey, I'm so glad you're here. We need to talk about that paycheck." I froze. What about it? Well, you're a working woman now, part of the world. It's time you started contributing properly. She leaned in, her perfume cloying. Your father and I feel the best way to manage this new phase is for you to put your salary into the Vale Household Reserve. Just for a little while, to help with upkeep. Upkeep, Marissa. I have my own apartment. I have student loans. Don't be selfish. Claire, this is family. Her hand, which had been on my arm, slid down to my purse. Just give me the envelope. It's direct deposit. Marissa, there is no envelope. Her eyes flashed with annoyance, just for a second. Of course. How modern. Well, you'll just have to log into your little app and transfer it over. Think of it as your contribution to this lovely party, to Tessa's future. I'm holding on to it for you. Really, it's an investment in the family. One day, you'll thank me for teaching you financial discipline. Marissa, I can't just... Claire, my father's voice, weak and reedy, joined the conversation. Howard shuffled over, already half drunk, his tie loosened. He avoided my eyes, looking at a spot on the wall behind me. Your mother is right, he mumbled. The house. We're in a bit of a jam. The roof is... it's a mess. A total mess. We're strapped. Just let her hold it for you. It's safer. Family first. Family first. The old refrain. Family first meant Tessa first. I have to think about it, I stammered, feeling the walls close in. The 29-year-old lawyer evaporated, and the 16-year-old girl, who was forced to give up her babysitting money for Tessa's ballet lessons, was standing in her place. There's nothing to think about, Marissa said, her voice hardening. We'll expect the transfer by morning. She turned, her smile snapping back on, and glided back into the party to greet a new arrival. My father gave me a pathetic, helpless shrug and followed her like a well-trained dog. I stood there, vibrating with a rage so cold it burned. My blazer felt like a costume. I fumbled for my phone. I wasn't going to transfer anything. I was going to show them my balance, show them my new student loan repayment schedule, and tell them to go to hell. I opened my Northbridge Mutual Banking app. I pressed my thumb to the sensor. The screen loaded. Checking account Claire Rivera. Balance, $12.53. I blinked. I refreshed the page. No, it had to be a glitch. $12. I scrolled down, my blood turning to ice. Pending transactions. None. Completed transactions. October 28th. Arden Pike Legal Services. Payroll deposit. Plus $4,800. October 28th. Auto sweep. Outgoing transfer to Vale Household Reserve. Minus $4,787.47. They hadn't waited for me to transfer it. They had taken it. Auto sweep. A feature I had never set up. A feature that implies access. I felt dizzy. I leaned against the wall. The curated gray paint cold against my back. How did they have access? My password. My eyes scanned the alcove. We were next to my father's small, messy home office nook. The new wireless printer was humming, forgotten, in the middle of a print job. A single piece of paper was sitting in the output tray. It wasn't a cocktail recipe. It wasn't a congratulatory note. It was a document. At the top, in stark black letters, financial power of attorney. It authorized Marissa Vale to manage, access, and conduct all financial transactions on behalf of me, and there, at the bottom, was the signature. Claire R. It was my signature, but it wasn't. It was pixelated, slightly tilted, a scan, a forgery, a clumsy, arrogant forgery. The room went quiet. The pounding in my ears drowned out the sound of the party, the laughter, the clinking glasses. They hadn't just stolen my first paycheck. They had laid the groundwork to steal all of them. The 16-year-old girl wanted to scream. She wanted to run into the living room, hold the paper aloft, and burn the whole house down. But the lawyer, the one who had clawed her way through 3 years of hell, took over. I took a slow, deep breath. I felt the ice in my veins solidify into steel. I did not cry. I did not scream. I took the forged document from the printer. I folded it neatly and put it in my blazer pocket. Then, I took out my phone. I closed the banking app. I opened the voice memos app. I pressed new recording. The small red icon glowed. I slid the phone, screen dark, into my breast pocket. The microphone pointing out. I needed air. I pushed through the French doors onto the back patio. The night air was cool. A few smokers were huddled by the expensive new fire pit. I walked past them, into the shadows of the yard. She always did like the smell of her own fires. I turned. My Aunt Miriam, Howard's sister, was sitting on a stone bench, hidden by a large hydrangea. She was the family pariah, the one who spoke the truth at Thanksgiving and was then ignored for 6 months. She held a glass of what looked like plain tonic water. I said nothing. I just stood there. "You passed the bar," she stated. It wasn't a question. "And you got your first paycheck today." I nodded, a tiny jerky movement. And she took it. My throat was too tight to speak. I just looked at her. "I saw Howard fiddling with that POA form on the scanner last week," Miriam said, swirling the ice in her glass. "He said Marissa told him it was just a formality, in case you had an emergency and they needed to access your funds, a household policy, she called it." She looked up at me, her eyes clear and sharp in the dim light from the house. "That woman," Miriam said, "would burn a masterpiece to warm her hands for 5 minutes, and your father would hand her the matches." She stood up, walked over, and placed her hand on my arm. Her hand was warm, steady. "Don't light the match. Claire, not tonight, not here. They are stupid, but they are clumsy. You are smart, and you are quiet." She squeezed my arm. "If you need a witness," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the party music. "If you need someone to sign an affidavit saying what they saw, what they heard, I'm here." She let go, picked up her glass, and walked back toward the light of the party, leaving me alone in the dark. I stood there for another minute, the cold seeping into my bones, the little red light on my phone silently, faithfully, recording. I wasn't just a lawyer, I was my own first client, and this was my first case. I stood in the cold shadow, the phone in my breast pocket feeling heavy, the muffled sound of the party Tessa's high-pitched, affected laugh. The thud of a bass line from a speaker in the living room felt like it was happening 100 miles away. My focus was sharp, crystalline. The $12.53 in my account was not a mistake. It was the latest entry in a ledger I had deliberately ignored for 15 years, and the silence in my head was replaced by the sudden, rapid clicking of an abacus. I heard Marissa call for more champagne, her voice brittle with command. Used to immediate obedience, I felt my muscles tense instinctively, my body preparing to go and fetch it. That had always been my role. I was not Claire, the daughter. I was Claire, the asset. The memory was so clear it was almost tactile. I was 16. Tessa, at 14, was having her sweet 16 2 years early because Marissa found a venue at the country club that was simply too perfect to pass up, and the only available date was that Saturday. I had spent the entire day hanging crepe paper and inflating what felt like 500 pink balloons. My job during the party was not to mingle. It was to run the catering kitchen, making sure the real caterers had their water glasses filled, refreshing the shrimp platters before they looked sparse, and darting through the crowd to pick up discarded napkins and plates. "Claire, be a doll," Marissa had cooed, pressing a stack of sticky plates into my hands as I tried to say hello to a friend from my own class. Her smile was diamond bright, her eyes iron cold. "Tessa needs to focus on her guests. You understand. You're the older sister. It's your job to help her shine." It was always my job to help. When I turned 18 and was given my grandmother's old sedan, I became the family chauffeur. I wasn't allowed to get an after-school job. My contribution was driving Tessa. Tessa has cheer practice, then debate club, then she simply must see that new French film with the girls. Marissa would list off, handing me a $20 bill for gas that barely covered a quarter tank. You don't mind, do you, Claire? Your father needs the good car for his commute. We're a team. I was the mule. I was the maid. I was the unpaid intern in the business of building Tessa, and now I was apparently the financier. I looked through the French doors at the center of the party. Tessa was preening. She was holding up her left hand, flashing an enormous cushion-cut diamond that looked heavy on her slender finger. Kellen Rhodes, her fiancé, stood beside her. He looked stiff in his bespoke suit, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. He didn't look like a man in love. He looked like a man who had just closed a complex, slightly risky merger. This paycheck theft wasn't the first time. It was just the most blatant. I won the Northbridge Civic Leadership Scholarship my senior year of high school. $5,000. To me, it was a fortune. It was my escape fund. It was textbooks, a meal plan, a laptop that didn't shut down every 40 minutes. The check came to the house, addressed to me. Marissa intercepted it at the mailbox. She sat me down at the kitchen table, the check held firmly between her manicured thumb and forefinger. We need to discuss this, Claire. It's my scholarship. Marissa, it's for tuition. Of course, darling. But family is a shared account. We all chip in. We all benefit. She gave me that patented, warm, toxic smile. Tessa has been offered an incredible opportunity, an etiquette and refinement course in the city. It's vital for her debutante season. And frankly, her manners need polishing. We're a little short on the deposit. My blood ran cold. You want to use my scholarship money for Tessa's etiquette course? I'm not taking it. Claire, don't be so dramatic. Her voice was soothing, like she was calming a spooked horse. I'm holding it. It's an investment in the family. When Tessa makes the right connections, when she marries well, we all benefit. It raises the family's profile. You'll thank me for this one day. A good girl knows when to wait for her turn. My turn never came. The $5,000 vanished. Tessa learned which fork to use for fish and how to curtsy to someone's grandmother, and my father. Where was Howard in all this? I found him. He was standing in the doorway, fiddling with his watch, avoiding my eyes. I pleaded with him. Dad, it's my money. I earned it. It's for school. Howard had shuffled his feet. He'd given me the line he always used, the one that absolved him of all spine. Family first, Claire, your career, your school, that comes second. Marissa knows what's best for the household finances. He was silent when the scholarship money was withdrawn. He was silent tonight, mumbling about a kitted roof. He was a coward, wrapped in the blanket of his wife's ambition, and he let her set the world on fire as long as he stayed warm. It wasn't just the scholarship. It was the savings bonds my maternal grandmother had left me. Cashed in, Marissa had explained cheerfully one afternoon. To cover the unexpected property tax adjustment, we'll pay you back, of course. They never did. Every dollar I ever earned from summer jobs, every birthday check, was immediately absorbed into the M. Vale Household Reserve, a fund that seemed to exist exclusively for Project Tessa, her clothes, her vacations, her personal branding. My sacrifices were met with contempt. The last Christmas I spent here, before the 3-year grind of law school, I was celebrating my acceptance. I was also staring down the barrel of $26,000 a year in student loans. Tessa, already casually dating Kellen, had looked at my acceptance letter pinned to the fridge. She sneered, tapping her perfect acrylic nail against the university logo. All that debt, all that reading, it's so sad. She'd looked at her own flawless hand, then at mine, nails short and bitten from stress. A degree doesn't buy a ring, Claire. I guess some of us have to work for a living, and some of us are just worth more. The pieces were clicking into place, fast and sharp, like a prosecutor building a case. The money, the forgery, the years of sacrifice. And then, a new, colder memory surfaced. One I had dismissed at the time as a technical glitch. About 6 months ago, during my final push for jobs, I'd had a promising email exchange with a recruiter from Wexler Hartwell LLP, a top-tier firm. We'd set up a preliminary phone interview. Then, silence. I followed up. Nothing. A week later, I got a notification. Your reply to recruiter Wexler has been blocked or filtered as spam. I had checked my settings. A filter had been created, redirecting all emails from http Google.com, search Q was Wexler.com, and https Google.com was search Q's Hartwell.com, straight to the trash bin. I hadn't created it. I'd assumed I'd been hacked, or it was a server error. I'd changed my password, annoyed, and moved on, eventually landing the job at the smaller, less prestigious Arden Pike. But who had my password? The filter had been created on March 12th. I checked my calendar on my phone. March 12th was a Saturday. I'd been home, visiting my father for his birthday. I had used the family desktop computer in the office nook to check my email. The computer I was standing next to right now, the one connected to the printer that held the forgery. They didn't just want to take my money. They wanted to capsize my career before it even started. They wanted me here, dependent, the help. I felt the adrenaline surge, the hot, white-knuckled anger that demanded I storm into that living room, hold the forged POA aloft, and detonate the entire party. But the lawyer in me, the one who had survived 3 years of the Socratic method, held me back. Never ask a question you don't know the answer to. Never show your hand until the trap is set. A public explosion was what Marissa wanted. She thrived on hysteria. She would paint me as the unstable, ungrateful, difficult daughter who was jealous of her sister's happiness. She would win. No, not tonight. Tonight, I was an observer. I was collecting discovery. I smoothed my blazer. I took a deep, steadying breath. The chill of the October air clearing my head. I was going back inside. I slipped back through the French doors, grabbing a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray. I needed to look casual. I needed to watch. I found a spot in the hallway, near the grand staircase, affording me a view of the living room and the kitchen. Tessa and Kellen were standing near the fireplace. Beneath their own banner, the crowd had shifted, giving them a moment of perceived privacy. I was in the shadows. They couldn't see me. Kellen was not smiling. His face was tense, his jaw working. "I'm just saying, Tessa," Kellen said, his voice low, urgent. "My father's accountants are going to do the due diligence before we merge the portfolios. This Vale household reserve you mentioned, the one financing your new media brand. Is it transparent? We need clean books." I held my breath. Tessa's response was sharp. She dropped the bubbly facade, and for a second, I heard Marissa. "Transparent?" Tessa scoffed. A tiny, ugly laugh. "It's a family fund. Kellen, it's not a corporation. Don't be vulgar. It's not vulgar. It's business. If my family is merging with yours, I need to know what I'm merging with." "Stop." Tessa's voice was ice. She reached up and adjusted his tie, a gesture that looked possessive, almost threatening. "The transparency is that you are marrying me. You get me. You get the perfect family. You get the Rhodes Vale partnership. Don't ruin it by looking at the receipts." Kellen looked at her. He didn't look convinced. He just looked trapped. Tessa saw his hesitation, and her face softened instantly, the mask snapping back into place. "Oh, look!" she chirped loudly, turning away from him as if she'd just noticed me. "There's Claire, my sister, the lawyer. Isn't she amazing?" She waved me over, a bright, fake, welcoming smile. I smiled back, a tight, precise smile. "Congratulations, Tessa," I said, my voice smooth as glass, as I walked toward them. "I'm so happy for you," I smiled, but the expression was a mask I had practiced for years. "Tessa, It's an incredible party. You look stunning. And Kellen, a pleasure to see you again. Claire, the lawyer, Tessa said again, louder this time, as if announcing an achievement that was, by extension, hers. Isn't it just perfect? It is, I said, my voice even. Absolutely perfect. If you'll excuse me, I just need to use the powder room. Long drive. I didn't go to the powder room. I turned the corner, past the grand staircase, and headed straight for the one place that was guaranteed to be empty, my father's study. It was no longer the warm, wood-paneled room I remembered from my childhood. Filled with his books on history and economics, Marissa had modernized it. Now it was all white lacquer, brushed steel, and uncomfortable geometric chairs. The only thing of my father's that remained was his old mahogany desk, looking completely out of place, like a relic, and on that desk was his laptop, the one he shared with Marissa, the family desktop, the one I had used back in March. The door was unlocked, as I knew it would be. Arrogance makes people sloppy. I slipped inside, closing the door until it just clicked, the sound muffled by the party's thrum. My heart was hammering, a frantic bird in my chest, but my hands were steady. I was no longer a guest. I was an investigator. The laptop was asleep. I tapped the spacebar. It woke up, asking for a password. I tried Howard 123. Denied. I tried Tessa Star. Denied. Then I tried the password Marissa had set for the family Wi-Fi, the one she thought was so clever. Vale Legacy 20. Success. The desktop bloomed to life. My eyes darted to the clock. 5 minutes, maybe 10, before someone wondered where I was. I needed one thing, the Vale Household Reserve. I opened the web browser. The homepage was set to the Northbridge Mutual Bank. The Remember Me box was checked. The username mvale was pre-filled. My God, they didn't even log out. I clicked log in. It asked for a 2-factor authentication code. Sent to Marissa's phone. Useless. I couldn't get in that way. I backed out and went to the desktop. My eyes scanned the icons. Tessa's wedding. House Reno. Receipts. I clicked on Receipts. A folder opened, filled with dozens of subfolders. Tessa Media. Household. Kellen. I clicked Household. A file list appeared. NB Mutual Septi PDF. NB Mutual Octi PDF. Jackpot. Bank statements. I opened the October statement first. My hands were shaking now, but with adrenaline, not fear. I scrolled down, past the deposits, to the withdrawals. October 8th, transfer to Tessa Media LLC, $2,000. October 12th, payment to Bridal Couture of Northbridge, $5,500. October 15th, payment to Lakefield Lifestyle Consultants, $3,000. Lakefield. My neighborhood. Lakefield Lifestyle Consultants. It sounded fake. It sounded like a shell company. I clicked on the September statement. September 15th. Payment to Lakefield Lifestyle Consultants. $3,000. August 15th. Payment to Lakefield Lifestyle Consultants. $3,000. A regular, repeating payment. My blood ran cold. I lived in Lakefield. Was this for me? Were they paying someone to watch me? I pushed the paranoia down. Focus. Claire. Get the facts. I went back to the household folder. I needed the authorization for that auto sweep. It wouldn't be in the statements. It would be in a separate file. I saw a file named Addendum Household Policy, PDF. I clicked it. It was a single page, typed on what looked like Marissa's personal letterhead. Though it was designed to look like a legal document, it was dated March 14th, 2 days after my visit. This addendum confirms that all dependent members of the Valle Rivera household agree to the terms of the Mounco Vale Household Reserve, including but not limited to the pooling of household income for mutual family benefit and strategic growth. At the bottom, under Acknowledged and Agreed, were 2 signature lines, Marissa Vale, a perfect, flowing script, and below it, Claire R. It was the same pixelated, blurry, scanned signature from the Power of Blank Attorney document, the one I'd found on the printer. Dependent members. I was 29 years old. I was a member of the bar. And she had, on paper, legally classified me as a dependent, like a child, using a forged signature. I heard laughter from the hallway, loud and close. I froze. I didn't breathe. The laughter moved on. Heading toward the back patio, I went back to work. I needed the auto-sweep authorization itself. It had to be here. I went to the search bar for the entire hard drive. I typed auto-sweep. One result, a PDF. NB Mutual Sweep CR. I opened it. It was the official Northbridge Mutual form. It authorized the bank to automatically sweep any deposit over $100 from my personal checking account. My account number was right there in black and white into the M. Vale Household Reserve. And there, in the authorization box, was the e-signature. It wasn't a handwritten scan this time. It was an electronic signature. Claire Rivera, dated March 12th. The form also required an email address for confirmation. The email listed was Claire or Northbridge, home. I had never seen that email address in my life. It was an email address created specifically for this one act of fraud. My mind was racing. This was a pattern. This was conspiracy. This was wire fraud. The filter, the spam filter that had blocked my job offer from Wexler Hartwell. It had been created on March 12th, the same day as this fraudulent e-signature. They hadn't just used the computer. They had hacked my personal email, found my bank details, and set up a system to drain me and sabotage my career. My rage was so pure, so sharp, it almost made me calm. This was not a family dispute. This was a crime scene. I looked around the desk. I needed to save this. I couldn't email it to myself. They would see the sent item. I fumbled in my purse for a thumb drive. I didn't have one. My eyes landed on a small, brushed steel USB drive plugged into the side of the laptop's dock. It was labeled, in Marissa's perfect cursive on a tiny white sticker, NBR board pitch. Northbridge, Kellen's family. I clicked on the drive, a single file. Our family, our values. PEX. A PowerPoint presentation. I opened it. The first slide was a professional photo of Howard, Marissa, and Tessa, all in cream-colored sweaters on a beach, smiling. The title, The Vale Roads Union, A Foundation of Integrity. I clicked through. Slides with bullet points on shared values, commitment to legacy, financial transparency, a slide detailing the M. Vale Household Reserve as a modern approach to multi-generational wealth management, a slide on the children. There was Tessa, in a cap and gown, and there was me, a grainy photo from my college graduation, years old. The text read, Claire Rivera, J.D., our family's legal counsel, managing internal compliance. I was internal compliance. I was the family lawyer they had invented, to make them look more legitimate to Kellen's family, a family that, as I just overheard, prized clean books. This was the pitch, a complete, fabricated fantasy of a perfect family to sell to the roads. And this USB drive was now my evidence folder. I worked quickly. I opened my email, my secure, two-factored, non-hacked law school email on my phone. I took a photo of the household policy addendum with the forgery. Click, sent. I took a photo of the auto-sweep authorization form, showing the fake email address. Click, sent. I took a photo of the bank statement showing the Lakefield Lifestyle Consultants payment. Click, sent. I photographed every damning slide of that presentation. Click, sent. I forwarded the entire email chain with all the photos to a single, trusted recipient. Miriam, blakegmail.com. Subject, hold this. Do not open. I will call you. I created a new note on my phone. Timeline, March 12th, e-signature on auto-sweep form. Created from IP address. I checked the computer's network settings, 192.168.1.100. This house. March 12th, email filter created on personal Gmail, blocking HTTPS. Google.com/search Kiosk Wexler, com, March 14th. Forged signature on Household Policy Addendum. October 28th, 9:02 a.m. Paycheck from Arden Pike deposited. October 28th, 9:03 a.m. Auto sweep activated. $4,787 transferred. I had the means, the motive, the opportunity, and the timeline. I had the mens rea and the actus reus. I heard the distinct, sharp clink of a glass being tapped with a spoon. It was coming from the living room. Friends, family. It was Howard's voice, thick with forced joviality. If I could have your attention for just a moment, I ejected the USB drive, NBR board pitch, and slipped it into my pocket, next to the folded, forged power of attorney. I closed the laptop. I wiped the spacebar and the desk where I had leaned with my sleeve. I took one last look at the sterile, white room. I opened the study door and slipped out. The hallway was empty. I walked toward the living room, the sound of my father's speech getting louder. And so, it is my great, great pleasure to raise a glass. I emerged from the hallway, just as every guest in the room was lifting their champagne flute. Kellen, Tessa, Marissa, her face a beaming mask of maternal pride. She caught my eye from across the room. She saw me, standing alone, without a drink. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. Where have you been? I didn't let her hold the gaze. I just looked at her, at my father, at the room full of strangers, and I smiled. A bright, wide, perfect smile. I raised my imaginary glass, right on cue. Cheers. The applause was thin. The toast was, thankfully, over. Guests began to cluster again, the energy of the party resetting. My father, looking relieved his part was done, went directly to the bar. I had remained in the entryway, a ghost at the feast, when Marissa's hand clamped down on my elbow. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her nails digging just enough to be a warning. "Claire, darling," she said, her voice a theatrical whisper, though her smile to the room was broad. "Let's get some fresh air, just us girls. There's a chill. Let's step out back." She didn't wait for my agreement. She propelled me forward, steering me not toward the main patio where Aunt Miriam had been, but toward the small, dark flagstone path that led to the unlit side garden. Behind the garage, it was where she went to take angry phone calls. It was where she had told my father she was selling my mother's jewelry. The party sounds faded behind us, replaced by the crunch of gravel under her heels and the distant hum of the highway. The air was cold, and I was glad for it. It kept my mind clear. She let go of my arm abruptly once we were in the deep shadow, hidden from the house by a tall row of arborvitae. She didn't shiver. She just stood there, a silhouette against the faint glow of the neighbor's security light. "You're making a scene, Claire," she hissed. The velvet was gone. This was pure, unadulterated Marissa. "I'm standing in a hallway," I said, my voice quiet. The phone in my pocket was still recording. "Don't be clever. It doesn't suit you." She crossed her arms. "You came into that room looking like a thundercloud. You embarrassed your father during his toast. You are jealous of your sister, and it is painfully obvious." "Is that what this is about? My expression?" "This," she said, taking a step closer, "is about your attitude. This is about that little performance you gave Howard and me in the mudroom. This family is on the verge of the most important merger of its life, the Rhodes family. And you, with your sour face and your little job, are threatening to upset the balance." "The balance," I repeated. The phrase was clinical, like the household reserve. "Yes, the balance." She began to pace, just 2 steps left, 2 steps right, on the small path. "You are an adult now. Claire, you have an income. It is time for you to learn how capital works. In a family like this, a family with prospects, money isn't spent, it is circulated. It moves. It gets put to work where it's needed most. Right now, it is needed for Tessa's wedding, for the presentation, to show the Rhodes family that we are solvent, that we are a unit. So you took my paycheck. I reallocated it, she snapped. I am holding it. I told you. You will thank me. This isn't just for Tessa. This is for you. When Tessa is a Rhodes, do you have any idea the doors that open? Kellen's uncle is a federal judge. His father's firm, Rhodes Developments, has an entire floor of in-house counsel. You play your cards right. You're not stuck at some Arden Pike. She said the name like it was something she'd scraped off her shoe. You could be general counsel in 10 years, but you have to contribute. You have to be a team player. I let the silence sit for a moment. I let her justifications hang in the cold air. That's a very compelling narrative, Marissa, I said. My voice was as flat and cold as the flagstones. But it doesn't answer the legal question. You mentioned circulation. Let's talk about procedure. What specific legal key point, what article, what signed instrument gives you the authority to access my private, password-protected bank account and execute a transfer of my salary, earned at my employer, without my express, voluntary, and written consent? She laughed. It was a short, sharp, ugly sound. Oh, Claire, you've read a few books, and now you think you're a powerhouse. Don't be naive. You're still a child. She reached into the tiny, glittering clutch purse she was carrying. She pulled out a single, folded piece of paper. It was a printout. It was the same one I'd found on the printer. The financial power of attorney. You signed this, she said, holding it out. The darkness made it almost impossible to read, but I knew what it was. I could feel the fraudulent pixels from 5 feet away. You signed this back in March. You gave me full authority to manage, access, and conduct all financial transactions. Your memory must be going, darling, all that studying. I didn't look at the paper. I looked at her. I didn't sign that. It's your signature. Claire, are you calling me a liar? I'm stating a fact, I said. I did not sign that paper, which means you, or my father, downloaded a copy of my signature, probably from my college enrollment forms, and digitally affixed it to a document I have never seen before. That isn't a legal mao-chot, Marissa. That's forgery. It's a felony. In this state, I believe that's a Class H. Carries up to 3 years, per count. She snatched the paper back. How dare you? I'm not finished, I said. You're right. I am a lawyer, which means I know that any first-year associate can request a forensic document examiner, and that examiner won't just look at the signature, they'll analyze the document's metadata. They will pinpoint the exact date and time the image file was created, which computer it was created on, and when it was pasted onto that PDF. I took a half step toward her. They can differentiate digital ink from pen pressure. They can trace the IP address that authorized the auto-sweep from my account. The one that was set up on March 12th from this house, the same day someone created a spam filter in my email to block a job offer from Wexler and Hartwell. The silence was absolute. Even the highway hum seemed to die down. Marissa's face was a pale oval in the dark, her mouth slightly open. The mask was gone. This was real. She was, for the first time, completely and totally silent. She hadn't just been caught. She had been analyzed. You, she finally whispered, her voice shaking with a rage that eclipsed my own. You ungrateful bitch, after everything I have done for you, after I raised you. You didn't raise me, I said, my voice still quiet, still level. You monetized me. You used me as unpaid labor. And now you've escalated to wire fraud. All to pay for this. I gestured back toward the glowing house. This party, she hissed, recovering. Is your future, Kellen, is our future. You will not ruin this for me. You will not ruin this for Tessa. Marissa, you've already ruined it. Kellen is looking for clean books. I heard him. What do you think he'll find when he looks at the household reserve? My paycheck, the $5,000 from my scholarship, my grandmother's bonds. Stop it. What's wrong? Claire's scared. You'll never be as good as me. A new voice cut through the dark. Tessa. She was standing at the end of the path, a champagne flute dangling from her fingers. She must have been looking for Marissa. I heard you two. You're just jealous. You're jealous that I'm getting married and you're… What a legal secretary. You're just mad that Kellen chose me. I looked past her. Standing in the light spilling from the patio doors, just behind her, was Kellen. He had clearly followed her. His face was unreadable, but he was listening. He was absolutely listening. This was it, the moment of detonation, the moment to hold up the forged document, to play the recording. But I didn't. That was Marissa's play. Mine was colder. I'm not selling my future to pay for a party, Marissa, I said, my voice loud enough for Kellen to hear. I'm not jealous. Tessa, I'm just a lawyer looking at a very clear case of financial fraud and identity theft. Fraud. Tessa laughed, but it was brittle. It's family, you idiot. The law doesn't have a family exception for forgery, I said. I looked directly at Kellen, who was now moving out of the shadows. His eyes were fixed on me. Claire, Marissa warned, her voice low. Kellen, I said, my tone polite, professional. A word of free legal advice. If you're looking for clean books, you might want to ask your fiancé's mother about the auto-sweep feature she set up on my bank account using a forged power of attorney. It's a fascinating case study in multi-generational wealth management. Kellen's face didn't just flicker, it collapsed. The polite, stiff fiancé disappeared. I saw a flicker of panic. He knew those words. Auto-sweep. Power of attorney. He looked at Tessa, then at Marissa, then back at me. His uncertainty was palpable. He had been sold a product, and he was just now realizing he hadn't read the fine print. Tessa saw his expression and lunged. Not at me, but at him. Kellen, baby, she's lying. She's crazy. She's always been jealous of me. Just ask my dad. Marissa tried to recover. This is a private family matter. Kellen, Claire is just overwrought. Her new job is very stressful. I didn't engage. I had planted the seed. I had given him the keywords. Auto-sweep, forgery, Wexler, and Hartwell. Let him do his own discovery. I looked at the three of them, Marissa, shaking with fury, Tessa, desperately clinging to Kellen's arm, Kellen, looking at me like he was seeing a shark in a swimming pool. I turned my back on them. This conversation is over, I said, walking away. Claire, you get back here, Marissa shrieked. You will not walk away from me. You will fix this. I stopped at the edge of the patio. Just before stepping into the light, I turned my head, just enough to see them. I won't fix it, I said. You will. You will return the $4,787.47 to my account. I paused. Tomorrow, you will all have my answer. I stepped into the light, leaving them in the dark garden with the poison I had just injected. I walked straight through the party, past the staring guests, past my father, who was laughing too loudly at a bad joke. I didn't get my coat. I walked out the front door, into the cold night air, the USB drive heavy in one pocket, my phone, still silently recording, in the other. I had drawn the battle lines, and they had no idea what kind of war they had just started. The drive back to Lakefield was a 90-minute blur of adrenaline and icy resolve. The party, the forged signature, Marissa's face in the dark, it all replayed in my mind not as a trauma, but as a series of exhibits. Exhibit A, the forged power of attorney. Exhibit B, the unauthorized auto-sweep. Exhibit C, the PowerPoint presentation. A foundation of integrity. I didn't just walk out of that house. I walked out with a case. My apartment in Lakefield felt like a sanctuary. It was small. The walls were thin, and the radiator knocked. But it was mine. No one had a key. No one had access. I locked the deadbolt, threw the chain, and put the NBR board pitch USB drive on my small desk like it was a piece of unexploded ordnance. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I made a pot of black coffee, pulled out a fresh legal pad, and sat down at my desk. The time for reaction was over. The time for planning had begun. My mind, trained by 3 years of issue-spotting exams, slotted the facts into a 3-layer strategy. It was a rapid, relentless assault plan, a chess game where I had to move 3 pieces at once. Layer A: stop the bleeding, secure my finances. Layer B: solidify the evidence, make the case unassailable. Layer C: control the narrative, set the stage for the checkmate. I started with Layer A. It was 7 a.m. on Sunday morning. The banks weren't open, but their fraud departments were 24/7. I dialed the number on the back of my Northbridge Mutual debit card. Northbridge Mutual, this is Kevin. How can I help you? The voice was offensively cheerful. Hello, Kevin, I said, my voice low and professional. My name is Claire Rivera. I am calling to report a series of unauthorized, fraudulent transactions on my checking account number ending in 4728. I'm very sorry to hear that. Ms. Rivera, can you specify the transactions? Yes, a single transaction on October 28th, an auto sweep transfer in the amount of $4,787.47 made to an account named M. Vale Household Reserve. I did not authorize this sweep. I see, ma'am. Our records show this sweep was authorized by a digital form signed on March 12th and supported by a financial power of attorney on file. My blood went cold, but I kept my voice steady. That is the core of my report. Kevin, I did not sign that digital form. The email address used for confirmation, Claire or Northbridge, home, is not mine. Furthermore, the financial power of attorney you have on file is a forgery. I have never seen it. I did not sign it, and I am prepared to sign a sworn affidavit to that effect. I am a member of the state bar, and I am formally reporting this as identity theft. The cheerfulness in Kevin's voice vanished. I understand. Ms. Rivera, thank you for clarifying. This is a very serious allegation. It is. I need 3 things immediately. First, I want a full reversal investigation opened on that transfer. Second, I want any and all power of attorney instruments or household policy addendums linked to my account, in any name, to be frozen and voided immediately, pending investigation. Third, I want all auto sweep or automatic transfer directives on this account permanently terminated. Yes, ma'am. I am filing the dispute right now, and I have placed a temporary freeze on the M. Vale Household Reserve account. Pending our investigation into the POA, that means no funds can be moved in or out by any party, including Ms. Vale, until this is resolved. I smiled, a small, cold smile. I hadn't even asked for that. Thank you. Kevin, that is a prudent step. You will be receiving a formal letter from me, along with a notarized affidavit, by close of business tomorrow. Understood. Ms. Rivera, we will investigate fully. I hung up. Layer A was in motion. The bleeding had stopped. The account was frozen. Marissa was going to wake up, check her balance, and find that the well was suddenly, inexplicably, dry. I moved to Layer B. Evidence. First, the IT department. I was new at Arden Pike. I couldn't just walk in and ask for a personal favor. I had to be strategic. I drafted an email to the head of IT, a guy named Sal. Subject: quick question. Personal cybersecurity concern. Hi, Sal. Hope you're having a good weekend. Quick, strange question for you. I was helping a family member with their email and noticed a suspicious spam filter had been created, one that blocked a major law firm. It seems to have been created back in March from an IP address I didn't recognize. I know this is outside of work, but as a new lawyer, I'm paranoid about security. Would you have 30 seconds on Monday to look at the header data with me? I'm just trying to confirm if the IP traces back to a domestic or foreign source. Happy to buy you coffee for the trouble. Best, Claire Rivera. It was deferential, nonspecific, and played to my new hire status. It was a request, not a demand. He'd reply. Second, the affidavit. I called Aunt Miriam. You're up early, she answered, her voice gravelly. I didn't sleep. You were right. Miriam, they're clumsy. What did you do? I gathered evidence. Now I'm building the case. I need your help. You said you knew a notary. Brenda Giles. Been notarizing wills and testaments in Northbridge for 30 years. She's seen every dirty family secret. What do you need? I need her to meet me, today if possible. I am drafting an affidavit stating that I, Claire Rivera, being of sound mind, have never signed any document granting Marissa Vale or Howard Rivera power of attorney or access to my personal bank accounts. I need it sworn, signed, and stamped. I'm going to the bank tomorrow, and I'm walking in with a cannon, not a pea shooter. She's at church, Miriam said simply, but her service ends at 11. I'll call her. She'll meet you at the Starbucks on Main at noon. Bring your driver's license. Thank you, Miriam. And the email I sent you, keep it safe. It's already saved on a drive and locked in my safe deposit box. Claire, like I said, I'm your witness. We hung up. My hands were moving. I plugged in the NBR board pitch USB. I copied the PowerPoint. I scanned the forged POA I'd taken from the printer. I saved the photos I'd taken in my father's study. I saved the audio file from my phone, the one that captured Marissa's "I'm holding it for you" and my entire confrontation in the garden. I uploaded every single file to a new, encrypted cloud drive, one secured with a 32-character password. I created a separate file, time-stamped, detailing the timeline, the bank call, the IT request, a full chain of custody, now, layer C, the confrontation. I knew Marissa. She would be apoplectic. She would call, screaming, or more likely, she would send my father to call, whimpering. The key was to get them into a controlled environment, on my terms. I pulled out a sheet of my new, professional letterhead, the expensive, watermarked kind I had bought with my first credit card. I drafted a formal letter, not a text, not an email, a letter. Via registered mail. Demand for preservation, cease and desist. To Howard Rivera. Marissa Vale. This letter serves as a formal notice to demand you immediately cease and desist all access to and transactions concerning my personal financial accounts. You are further directed to preserve all evidence, electronic or otherwise, related to the M. Vale Household Reserve, the creation of the email address, Claire, our Northbridge, home, and all financial power of attorney documents bearing my name. Failure to comply will be considered spoliation of evidence. It was dense. It was terrifying. It was pure legalese. I cited 3 state statutes on forgery and wire fraud. I printed it, signed it, and put it in an envelope, ready to be sent registered mail first thing Monday morning. They would have to sign for it. The trap was almost set. Now, I just needed the bait. My phone rang. It was 1 p.m., right on schedule. It wasn't Marissa. It wasn't my father. It was Tessa. Claire, she sniffled. You've done a terrible thing. What have I done, Tessa? You upset Kellen, she wailed. He left the party, and he's not answering his phone. You and your words. You're trying to ruin my life because you're jealous. I stated facts, Tessa. Marissa she's having one of her spells. She's in her room. You've ruined everything. The call ended. It wasn't a call. It was a guilt trip. My phone rang again. 5 minutes later, Marissa. Her name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 4 times, then answered. Hello? You? She hissed. No, darling. No, honey. Just you. I'm here, Marissa. You have destroyed this family. In one night, Kellen is questioning everything. The bank just called. They've frozen the reserve account. The entire account. Tessa's caterer deposit is due tomorrow. You have screwed us. Claire, royally. You forged my signature. Marissa, you committed a felony. You screwed yourself. There was a sharp intake of breath. Then, the pivot, the tears. I don't know what you're talking about, she sobbed. A terrible, fake, racking cry. That was a A misunderstanding. A bank error. Your father? He's a mess. You've broken his heart. We need to fix this. We need to talk. As a family. You need to come here. For dinner. Saturday. We'll reconcile. There it was. The reconciliation dinner. The stage. I agree, I said. My voice soft. Accommodating. We need to talk. Saturday is fine. I'll be there at 7. Good, she sniffled. Good. We'll fix this. We'll talk to Kellen. You'll explain that you were confused. I'll be there at 7. Marissa. Goodbye. I hung up. She thought she had set the stage for an ambush, a family intervention to browbeat me into submission. She didn't realize she had just RSVP'd to my deposition. One last piece. I opened my texts. I found Kellen Rhodes. I typed a single, clean professional message. Kellen, I believe you mentioned an interest in clean books and transparency. If that is still the case, I suggest you bring your own copies of the Tessa Media LLC and household reserve statements to the reconciliation dinner Marissa is hosting on Saturday. I will be presenting my findings then. Regards, Claire Rivera, Escop. I hit send. I leaned back in my chair. The sun was starting to set. My legal pad was full. My email was sent. My letter was drafted. My affidavit was notarized. I looked at my risk assessment list. Risk 1. Family unites against me. Mitigation Kellen. He's the wild card. His financial self-interest now outweighs his interest in Tessa. Risk 2. Marissa plays the victim. Mitigation, the audio recording, the forged documents, facts, not feelings. Risk 3. Howard collapses. Emotionally blackmails. Mitigation. Aunt Miriam, a neutral, third-party witness. Risk 4, legal threat. Mitigation. I am the legal threat. My rule for Saturday was simple. My rule was absolute. No slandering, no insults, no raising my voice. I would not drag them through the mud. I would simply present the facts. I would present the procedures, the truth, deployed with surgical precision. Does not need to yell. It just needs to be seen. The house was a stage set. When I arrived at precisely 7 p.m., the door was opened by Howard, not Marissa. He was wearing a new cashmere sweater, a pained, forced smile plastered on his face. He looked like a hostage reading a script. Claire, you're here. Good, good. He ushered me into the dining room. Marissa had outdone herself. The table was laid with the good wedding china, the one my mother had picked out, which Marissa only used for performances. Tapered candles burned, casting a warm, deceptive glow. Soft jazz, the kind they play in expensive hotel lobbies, drifted from a hidden speaker. It was a perfect, suffocating tableau of family. Tessa was already seated, wearing white, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin, though her makeup was flawless, and at the far end of the table, his presence a block of ice in the warm room, was Kellen. He was not looking at Tessa. He was looking at the centerpiece, his jaw set. He had brought a thin, leather-bound briefcase, which sat on the floor by his chair. My own briefcase, holding my notarized affidavit, the bank letters, and the USB drive, felt like a weapon. I placed it by my feet. Marissa emerged from the kitchen carrying a tureen of soup, her face arranged in an expression of beatific forgiveness. She was the matriarch, the healer, the one bringing nourishment to her fractured family. Claire, thank you for coming, she said, her voice rich with false empathy. I'm so glad we can all be here, together, to reconnect. She sat at the head of the table. Howard ladled the soup. For a few minutes, the only sounds were the clinking of spoons against porcelain and the soft crooning of a saxophone. The tension was so thick, I could have cut it with my soup knife. Marissa placed her spoon down. The performance began. I know, she started, her voice a gentle, loving purr, that there have been feelings, hurt feelings, on all sides. She looked at me, her eyes brimming with what a fool would mistake for sincerity. And I wanted us to have this night, just us, to put all of that aside. This is a safe space. Tonight, we are not going to talk about money. We are not going to talk about banks or paychecks. She smiled, a wide, magnanimous gesture. We are going to talk about what really matters: feelings, family, healing. We are going to find our way back to each other. It was a brilliant move. She was attempting to disarm me, to paint me as the cold, litigious one if I brought up the vulgar topic of her theft. Howard, on cue, put his spoon down and nodded, his brow furrowed with practiced concern. Your mother is right, Claire. He wouldn't look at me, staring instead at his bread plate. This whole business, it's gotten out of hand. You're part of this family, and you said some terrible things to your mother, to Tessa. He finally looked up, his eyes pleading. I think you owe your mother an apology. Just say you're sorry. We can let this all go. Put that paycheck business behind us. It's just money. We're family. That's what's important. Let's just move on. Apologize. Be the good girl. Let them keep the $4,700. Before I could respond, Tessa sniffled, a perfect, calculated sound. She doesn't care about us. She looked at Kellen, her eyes wide and wet. She's trying to ruin everything. My life, my future. She sat up, straightening her back, attempting to look professional. I'll have you know, Claire, that while you've been off, doing whatever it is you do, I have been working. I just secured my first major brand partnership. Oh, Tessa. That's wonderful, Marissa gushed. Yes, Tessa said, nodding. It's a 6-figure collaboration, but, and her face hardened. The contract requires a significant media buy. This week, I need access to the media fund, the household reserve, the one you had frozen. Claire, you're actively sabotaging my career. So, that was the play. They needed the account unfrozen. They needed me to call off the fraud investigation. This wasn't a reconciliation. It was a negotiation. And they thought I was the one who was desperate. I let the silence hang. I took a slow sip of water. I understand, I said finally, my voice calm and low. The jazz music seemed to fade. You all want to talk about feelings. You want to move on. But it seems the bank is stuck on the facts. I reached into my briefcase. I did not pull out the affidavit. I did not pull out the forged POA. I pulled out a single, folded letter on Northbridge Mutual's official letterhead. I spent some time with the bank's fraud department this week, I said, unfolding it. I wanted to understand the misunderstanding by, as you called it, Marissa. Marissa's smile tightened. Claire, I said, I know what you said. You said it was a banker's error. I smoothed the paper. They seemed to disagree, according to this letter. From their head of investigations, the auto-sweep feature was established on March 12th at 9:04 a.m. using the online banking portal, not by a banker, Marissa, by a user, and it was authorized from an IP address that pings directly back to the router in this house, the one connected to your desktop computer. That's absurd, Marissa said, her voice rising, losing its honey. It's a mistake that young man at the bank, Howard. You remember him? He must have used our computer, remotely. It's a clerical error. Yes, Howard said, grabbing the lifeline. A mistake. That's all. A simple clerical error. A clerical error, I repeated. I looked at Kellen. Kellen had not touched his soup. He cleared his throat. The sound was like a gavel. Speaking of clerical errors, he said, his voice flat and cold. He leaned down and retrieved his leather briefcase. He clicked it open, the sound echoing in the dining room. He pulled out a small, neat stack of papers. Marissa, he said, not looking at her, but at the papers. Last week, you sent my accountant a summary of the M. Vale household reserve. You said it was for our prenuptial financial transparency. Yes, Marissa said, suddenly wary. To show how Cohesive. Our family finances are cohesive, Kellen repeated. He slid a single statement across the polished wood of the table. This is the operating statement for Tessa Media LLC, which you funded with the reserve. And this is the full itemized statement from the reserve, which the bank was kind enough to provide me when I identified myself as a concerned party. Tessa went white. Kellen, that's private? It is, he said, and it's very informative. I see the transfers from the reserve to Tessa Media. $4,000 here, $5,000 here. He tapped the paper. But on the Tessa Media statement, I don't see any outgoing payments to media partners. I see a $2,000 charge for social media ad boost personal. I see a $900 charge at a personal branding photography studio. And I see, what is this? A $3,000 down payment on a lease for a new luxury convertible. In your name, Tessa. Tessa let out a small, strangled sound. That's for the brand. I have to look successful to be successful. Marissa stared at Kellen, her face a mask of pure betrayal. You went behind my back. I'm protecting my family's assets, Kellen said, his voice like chipped ice. You told my father this was a fund for strategic growth. It appears to be a slush fund for your daughter's shopping. The room was silent. The jazz music was still playing, a grotesque soundtrack to the implosion. Howard looked at Marissa, then at Tessa, then at his soup. He looked like he was going to throw up. This was the moment. The air was charged. So, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. Not a banker's error, and not a media buy. Just reallocation. I took my phone from my pocket and placed it on the table. Marissa, you said this was all a misunderstanding. You said tonight was about feelings, not money. It is, she cried, her voice cracking with rage and panic. This is an attack. You've poisoned him, Claire. This is all your fault. You said, I continued, that you were just holding my money for me, that I would thank you one day for the financial discipline, but that's not what you said last week, is it? I pressed the play button on the screen. The recording was loud in the quiet room. My own voice, cold and clear. What specific legal mauchot gives you the authority, without my consent? Marissa's voice, hissing and vile. You ungrateful bitch. I skipped forward to the clip from the party. Marissa's voice, confident and condescending. I'm holding on to your first paycheck. You'll thank me one day. I pressed stop. The silence that followed was absolute. The only sound was Tessa's small, sharp inhale. The jazz had moved on to a mournful trumpet solo. Howard's face was chalk white. He looked at Marissa, his mouth open. Tessa was crying. Real, ugly tears now, her makeup running. Marissa was staring at my phone, her chest heaving, her eyes burning with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. Howard finally found his voice. It was a weak, reedy whisper. Claire, turn that off. My God, this is indecent. We are at the dinner table. You can't just. This is a family matter. He was clinging to the last shred of decorum. He wasn't horrified by the crime. He was horrified that it was being proven, that the appearance of the perfect family was being ripped to shreds in front of Kellen. I slowly, deliberately, locked my phone and placed it face down on the table. I looked at my father. I looked at Tessa. I looked at Kellen. And finally, I looked at Marissa. You're right, Dad. It's indecent, I said, my voice perfectly level. It was just a misunderstanding, a clerical error. I folded the bank letter and put it back in my briefcase. We're not here to fight. We're just here to confirm the events. I pushed my chair back slightly, my soup untouched. Today, we're not drawing any conclusions. We're just confirming the facts. The air in the room was brittle, ready to shatter. Howard was staring at his plate as if it held the answers to the universe. Tessa was crumpled, her weeping having subsided into hiccuping sniffles. Marissa, however, was vibrating. She was a cobra, coiled, her eyes fixed on my phone. The silence was absolute, broken only by the tinny sound of the jazz trumpet. She was opening her mouth, her face twisted with a rage that was about to become operatic, when the doorbell rang. The sharp, clean chime was a mercy. It sliced through the suffocating tension. Howard, grateful for any excuse to escape, fumbled with his napkin. I'll get that. Must be a neighbor. No need. Howard, a new voice, calm and crisp, echoed from the foyer. Aunt Miriam. She walked into the dining room, not as a guest, but as an adjutant. She was wearing a smart tweed blazer, and she was not alone. Behind her stood an older woman, her gray hair in a severe bun, carrying a heavy leather briefcase and a professional ledger. Miriam. Howard sputtered, half standing. What is this? We're in the middle of dinner. This won't take a moment, Miriam said, her voice carrying easily into the room. She stood by the doorway, a guardian. I believe you all know Brenda Giles. She has been the most trusted notary in Northbridge for 30 years. She's just here to witness a signature. Marissa's face went from rage to confusion, then back to rage. A signature, you. You are invading my home. This is a private family dinner. Get her out. It's all right, Marissa, I said. I reached down to my own briefcase, placing it on my lap. I invited them. This is a family matter. You're right, but this part requires a legal witness. The notary, Ms. Giles, looked entirely unfazed. Her gaze swept the table, cataloging the scene: the crying girl, the pale man, the furious woman with the detached air of someone who had, indeed, seen every dirty family secret in the county. Ms. Rivera, are you ready? I pulled the document from my case. It was the one I had drafted on Sunday, the one I had reviewed a dozen times. I placed it on the table, next to my untouched soup. What? What is that? Howard whispered, his voice trembling. It's my affidavit, I said simply, my voice clear in the quiet room. It's a sworn statement, given under penalty of perjury. It just details the facts. It states that I, Claire Rivera, did not sign the financial power of attorney. It states that I did not authorize the auto sweep from my account. It states that the email, Claire Northbridge, home, is not, and has never been, mine. It states that the funds were transferred fraudulently. I'm just attesting to the truth. You swore, Marissa stammered. Ms. Giles held out a pen. Please state your full name and confirm you are signing this document of your own free will. Claire Elizabeth Rivera, I said, taking the pen. I am signing it of my own free will. In the dead silence of the dining room, observed by my weeping sister, my ashen father, my furious stepmother, and a stone-faced Kellen, I signed my name. The loops and crosses were firm, decisive. Ms. Giles took the document. She opened her heavy ledger, pressed her embosser, and affixed her official seal. The thud click of the stamp on the dining room table was the loudest, most final sound I had ever heard. Signed, witnessed, and notarized, she said, her voice booming in the small space. 7:05 p.m., October 30th. Thank you, Ms. Rivera. As Ms. Giles packed her briefcase, my phone, which I had left on the table, buzzed. The screen lit up. It was an email. Excuse me, I said, picking it up. My heart was pounding. It was from the Northbridge Mutual Fraud Department. Subject, an update on your investigation case, 92A. I scanned the first paragraph. My eyes widened. Well, this is timely. What now? Tessa wept, her voice muffled by her napkin. It's an email, I said, from the lead investigator at the bank. You remember our discussion, Marissa, about the clerical error. The one you suggested was made by a banker who remotely used your computer. It was, she insisted, her voice high and thin. It was a mistake. They seem to disagree, I said, turning the phone screen slightly so the light caught my face. They have concluded their internal investigation. They found the original authorization for the auto sweep, and they have confirmed the email address used to authorize it. Claire R. Northbridge, home. They've traced its creation. It was, and I quote, created on March 12th via a third-party, non-affiliated domain host, and was never associated with Ms. Rivera's official client profile or IP address. They are formally classifying the power of attorney as fraudulent and the subsequent transfer as unauthorized. Howard made a small, choking sound. What? What does that mean? It means, Kellen said, his voice flat and quiet, that the bank agrees it was theft. Before Marissa could form a response, before she could even breathe. My phone buzzed again. Another email. Another notification. I looked at it. It was from Sal, the head of IT at Arden Pike. Subject RE. Quick question. Personal cybersecurity concern solved. Oh, goodness, I said, a small, cold smile I couldn't repress touching my lips. What? Howard whispered. He looked green. This, I said, is from my firm's IT department. I had them look into that spam filter I mentioned, the one that blocked my job offer from Wexler and Hartwell. I looked up, my gaze landing on Marissa, then shifting to Tessa. Sal is very good at his job. He analyzed the header data. The filter wasn't just created on March 12th from this house's IP address. It was set up by a user who was logged into my Gmail account, who then immediately, and this is the interesting part, immediately set up a forwarding rule. My entire inbox, every job offer, every acceptance, every case file from my law clinic was being forwarded to a different address. What? What address? Kellen asked. He was leaning forward, his hands flat on the table. I locked eyes with my sister. Tessa Media, LLC Gmail, com. Tessa let out a sound like a stepped-on animal, a high-pitched, desperate whine. That was the breaking point. You! Marissa shrieked, shooting to her feet. Her chair crashed backward onto the expensive rug. Her face was purple with rage, but she wasn't looking at me. She was pointing a shaking finger at the doorway, at my aunt. This is your doing, you. You snake. You brought these people, into my home. You have been poisoning my daughters against each other. You are dividing this family. Aunt Miriam, who had been standing quietly, watching the notary pack, didn't flinch. She just looked at Marissa, her gaze unwavering. I didn't divide this family, Marissa, Miriam said, her voice cutting through the hysteria. The forgery did, the theft did, the lies did. I am not preserving a side here. I am preserving the truth. Good evening, Ms. Giles said briskly to the room at large. She and Miriam turned and walked out of the dining room. A moment later, we heard the heavy front door click shut. The room was a wreck. The performance was over. The set destroyed. Tessa was weeping openly, her face buried in her hands. Howard was rubbing his temples, rocking slightly, muttering, "Oh God, oh God, oh God." Marissa was standing, breathing like she'd just run a marathon, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. I reached back into my briefcase. I pulled out the final document. It was a copy of the registered letter I had sent on Monday. This, I said, is just for your records. The original was delivered and signed for by my father. I slid it across the table. It stopped in front of Howard's water glass. He fumbled with it, his hands shaking. What is this now? More papers. It's the demand letter, I said. It's not about feelings, it's a procedure. It outlines the full amount owed the $4,787.47 from my paycheck. It also includes reimbursement for the billable hours I spent conducting this investigation, my legal filing fees, and the fee for Ms. Giles's notary services. The total is $5,600. $5,000. Howard choked. You have 7 days from today to return that full amount to my account, I continued, my voice cold and steady. If the full amount is not there by the deadline, the next document I file will not be an affidavit. It will be a civil complaint, filed with the Northbridge District Court, naming both of you for conversion, wire fraud, and forgery. That was the word. Not fraud, not theft. But court? Court? Howard stood up, his voice cracking, scaling an octave. You would sue us. You would take your own father, your mother, to court. You would drag our name, our family name, through the mud, in front of the entire town. You're worried about the name, I asked, my voice flat with a familiar, ancient disappointment. This is family. Claire, you don't do this to family. You're right, I said. I stood up as well. Placing my napkin calmly on the table, I gathered my briefcase. This isn't what family does. Family doesn't forge signatures. Family doesn't steal paychecks. Family doesn't sabotage careers. I looked at my father, his face pale and terrified. You're upset that I'm bringing the law into this. I'm doing this because of the law. It is the only language you and she seem to understand. I am choosing to do this the right way, the procedural way. It is the only way left to preserve any honor for any of us. I turned to leave. Wait. The voice was Kellen's. It was sharp, and it stopped me. I looked back. He was sitting perfectly still. He had watched the entire detonation, the notary, the emails, the demand letter with a kind of forensic stillness. He was no longer the stiff fiancé. He looked like a man who had just survived a plane crash and was assessing the damage. He slowly rose to his feet, buttoning his suit jacket. He did not look at Tessa, who was staring at him, her tears frozen on her face. He looked only at me. His expression was one I had never seen before. It was not anger. It was not pity. It was respect. Ms. Rivera, he said, his voice clear and formal, cutting through the wreckage. May I walk you to your car? Kellen's request hung in the ruined atmosphere of the dining room. Tessa, who had been staring at him with a look of desperate, tear-streaked hope, seemed to crumple. His formal Ms. Rivera was a clearer rejection than any argument. Howard looked baffled. Marissa's eyes narrowed, seeing her primary ally defect to the enemy camp in real time. That's not necessary. Kellen, Howard stammered, trying to regain some footing as the host. Claire knows her way. I insist, Kellen said. It was not a request. I nodded once. Thank you. Kellen, I picked up my briefcase, turned my back on the wreckage of the dinner, the cooling soup, the weeping girl, the sputtering father, the silent, vibrating fury of my stepmother, and walked out. Kellen followed me, his footsteps firm on the hardwood floor. We walked through the foyer and out onto the front steps, into the cold, clean night air. The silence was a relief. I walked down the slate path toward my car, parked 3 houses down. She's been forwarding your emails, Kellen said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. Since March 12th, I replied, along with setting up the auto sweep and forging the power of attorney. Wexler and Hartwell, he mused, mostly to himself. My father's firm, Rhodes Developments, keeps them on retainer. That's a serious firm. That technical glitch Sal mentioned. They cost you a significant opportunity. I stopped by my car door, turning to face him. They did. He looked at me, his face illuminated by the streetlight. He was assessing me, not as his fiancée's sister, but as a colleague, or perhaps an opponent. You have the bank's letter, the notary's affidavit, the IP logs, and the audio recording. You have him. He nodded toward the house. On wire fraud, and her. Another nod. On forgery and identity theft, you're not just asking for the $5,000 back. You're holding a kill switch. I'm just asking for what's mine, I said. And for it to stop. It will stop, he said. He looked back at the house, his expression unreadable. The merger you heard us discussing. My family values transparency. This, he gestured broadly, is the opposite of that. You haven't just saved your own career, Ms. Rivera. You've saved me from a catastrophic liability. He reached into his breast pocket and handed me a business card. Kellen Rhodes, Managing Director, Rhodes Developments. I know who you are, I said. If your civil complaint requires a third-party witness, he said, one who can attest to the financial irregularities of the Mavale Household Reserve, you have my number. I'll be conducting my own internal audit. He turned and walked back toward the house, but I knew he wasn't going inside. He was walking to his own car. The engagement was over. The next morning, Monday, I was not at my desk at Arden Pike. I was at the main branch of Northbridge Mutual at 9 a.m. When the doors opened, I didn't go to a teller. I had an appointment with the branch manager, a Mr. Davies, whom I had spoken to after the fraud department's initial email. I sat in his glass-walled office and laid the documents on his desk, one by one. Mr. Davies, I am Claire Rivera. This is the follow-up to case number 92A. I handed him the notarized, stamped affidavit from Brenda Giles. This is the official bank letter confirming the fraudulent email address. This is the evidence log, detailing the IP address trace from my firm's IT department. And this, I said, handing him a copy of the forged power of attorney, is the instrument of the fraud itself. He read the affidavit, his expression growing more grim with every line. He looked up at me over his glasses. Ms. Rivera, he said, his voice low. This is comprehensive. On behalf of Northbridge Mutual, I apologize. This should never have happened. I appreciate that. Mr. Davies, my concern now is twofold. First, the immediate return of my funds. Second, ensuring that my accounts are permanently firewalled from Marissa Vale and Howard Rivera. Understood. He picked up his phone. Yes. Janet, I need you to release the funds from the investigative hold. Correct. The full $4,787. Transfer them immediately back to Ms. Rivera's account, citing fraudulent transfer reversal. And yes, permanently sever all links to the Vale Household Reserve. That account, he looked at me, is to remain under an indefinite investigative freeze. Pending a full audit, we will be contacting Ms. Vale separately. I watched him on his computer. I saw the balance in my own app, which I had open on my lap, jump from $12 to $4,800. I stood up and extended my hand. Thank you for your prompt attention. Mr. Davies, he shook it. Good luck, Ms. Rivera. I walked out of the bank and went to the post office. I mailed the registered letter, the notice of preservation, to the General Counsel of Northbridge Broadband, the ISP for my father's house. It legally obligated them to find and preserve all server logs for the IP address 192.168.1.100 for the date of March 12th. Then, I sat in my car and wrote a new, simpler letter. This one was on plain stationery. I addressed it to my father's private office address, not the house. Howard, it began. The enclosed is a copy of the demand letter for $5,600, for which the 7-day clock is now running. Notwithstanding that demand, I am making you a one-time good faith offer. I am not your lawyer, and this is not legal advice, but an attempt at a final, quiet resolution. If an immediate payment of 70% of the total, that is $3,920, is made within the next 5 business days, I will agree to a non-interest-bearing payment plan for the remaining 30%. This offer is contingent on your immediate signature on an agreement of permanent non-interference with my person, property, and employment, and a formal dissolution of the fraudulent power of attorney. If the 5-day deadline is missed, this offer is void, and I will see you in court. I signed it. Claire, it was an olive branch, but it was barbed. That afternoon, I was at my desk, catching up on paralegal briefs, when my office phone rang. Claire Rivera speaking. Ms. Rivera, this is Ann Bishop from Wexler and Hartwell LLP. I'm the head of recruitment here. My heart gave a single, hard jolt. I'm calling, and I must apologize, about a rather embarrassing technical issue we discovered. It seems a number of candidates from this spring, including you, were inadvertently filtered out of our system. Your file just came to my attention, and frankly, your qualifications are exceptional. I know you've accepted a position with Arden Pike, but we would be very interested in bringing you in for a formal interview, if you're at all open to it. I looked out my small office window at the brick wall of the next building. Thank you for reaching out, Ms. Bishop, I said, my voice perfectly steady. Yes, I would be very open to that. I am available to meet this Friday. The fallout was not just legal, it was digital. The next day, I saw Tessa's Instagram feed. She had posted a series of blindingly bright photos from the engagement party. So blessed to have such a supportive family. She captioned one, "Through thick and thin, we always pull through family first Vale Roads blessed." But she was, as Aunt Miriam said, clumsy. In one of the photos, she was holding up a champagne flute, and on the table beside her, partially visible, was the Tessa Media LLC statement Kellen had brought. You could just make out the words bridal couture, $5,500, and lease, $3,000. The comments, at first fawning, began to turn. A local society blogger, one who clearly followed both the Vales and the Rhodes, zeroed in. Wait, is that a statement? Why is the household reserve paying for a $5,000 dress before the wedding? I thought Kellen was. Another one. Tessa, honey, you need to hide your receipts. This doesn't look like media buys to me. A third. I've been hearing rumors for weeks. Where is this money coming from? We need some transparency. Tessa Vale. An hour later, I got a text from Aunt Miriam. Just saw your sister at the Northbridge Farmers Market. Tried to buy a $30 artisanal cheese. Her Amex was declined, then her Visa, then her debit. The cashier said, "I'm sorry, ma'am. The supplementary card has been revoked." She left her basket and ran out. Kellen hadn't waited for an audit. He had cut the cord. The inevitable call came Wednesday morning. While I was drafting a motion, my personal phone lit up with Marissa's name. I let it ring once, twice. I took a breath. Hello? It wasn't a voice. It was a shriek, a torrent of unprocessed rage and panic. What did you do? What did you do to me? The bank? They sent a letter. Indefinite investigative freeze. They're treating me like a criminal Tessa's brand partnership. The contract is voided. They're gone. Kellen is gone. You have ruined us. You are destroying this house. You are tearing this family apart. I held the phone away from my ear, listening to the hysteria peak and fall. I waited until she had to take a ragged breath. I'm not destroying the house. Marissa, I said, my voice as calm and cold as the glass of water on my desk. I'm stopping the leak, the one you started. I hung up. I worked for another 2 hours. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text message. It was an unknown number, but I knew who it was. The message was all lowercase, typed with shaking hands. Claire, it's Howard. Us father. I got us letter. The one you sent to my office. We need to talk. Just us. No Marissa. Please. I can be at the old diner in Lakefield. 1 hour. Please. He was running. He was terrified. And he was finally willing to talk without his handler. The united front was broken. I looked at the text. I looked at the motion on my screen. I typed back one word. Fine. The diner in Lakefield was called The Daily Grind. It was a relic. A narrow car with worn-out vinyl booths and the lingering smell of burnt coffee and old frying oil. It was the last place in the world Marissa would ever set foot. It was neutral ground. I was already in a booth by the back wall, my briefcase on the bench beside me. When he came in, the little bell above the door chimed, and I watched my father hesitate, blinking in the dim fluorescent light. He looked terrible. He was wearing the same cashmere sweater from the dinner, but it looked slept in. His face was gray, puffy, and etched with a fear I had never seen before. He looked 10 years older than he had on Saturday. He slid into the booth opposite me, not meeting my eyes. A waitress came over, and he just mumbled, "Coffee, black." He stared at his hands, clasped on the Formica tabletop, until she returned. He took a sip, grimaced, and put the mug down. "Claire," he started, his voice a dry rasp. I just waited. You were right," he whispered, finally looking at me. His eyes were bloodshot. "The roof, it was never broken. You knew that, didn't you?" "I assumed," I said, my voice quiet. "The money wasn't for the roof, it was for Tessa." He nodded, a jerky, pathetic movement. "The engagement party, the PR, Marissa hired a firm, Lakefield Lifestyle Consultants. God, I guess that was to watch you." He shut his eyes, as if in pain. "It was all for the pitch, the presentation, to show the Rhodes family that Tessa was already a brand, that we were successful, that she was a good investment, and she used my paycheck as seed money," I finished. "She said you wouldn't mind. She said you'd want to help your sister." He was pleading, his voice cracking. "Claire, I never wanted this. I just wanted peace." "You wanted silence," I corrected him, but my voice was soft. The fight was gone. This wasn't a confrontation. It was an autopsy. "Yes," he admitted, a tear tracking down his gray cheek. I can't have this. The lawsuit, the court." He leaned forward, his voice desperate. I'll pay it back, all of it, the $5,600. I'll get it. Just tell me you'll stop. Tell me you won't file that complaint. Please, as your father, I'm begging you." I let his plea hang in the air. I let him sit in the silence, stewing in the consequences he had avoided his entire life. Then, I reached into my briefcase. I pulled out the 2 documents I had prepared. "This," I said, sliding the first one across the table, "is the good faith offer I sent to your office. The repayment schedule." He grabbed it, his hands shaking as he read the terms. "The 70% payment within 5 days, the non-interest-bearing plan for the rest." "And this," I said, sliding over the second document, "is what makes that offer valid. This is the real price." He looked at it. "Agreement of non-interference. It's a contract. Dad, it's very simple. It states that you and Marissa Vale will never again, for the rest of your lives, attempt to access my bank accounts, use my name or social security number, interfere with my employment, or represent me in any capacity, financial or otherwise. It specifies that any breach of this contract will result in an immediate penalty of $100,000, plus legal fees." He stared at the paper, his face ashen. $100,000. "It's a penalty clause," I said. "It's standard. It's just there to ensure you never, ever think about doing this again. This contract, and the $5,600, is my price for not filing the civil suit." He looked up from the paper, his eyes filled with a helplessness that was deeper than just the fear of the lawsuit. I can't, Claire. You can't what? You can't sign it. I can't pay it," he whispered, his shame radiating across the table. "Not the 70%, not in 5 days. I don't have it." "What are you talking about? You're a partner at your firm. You have savings. You have investments." "No," he said, and the word was choked. She does." I froze. "What?" "Marissa," he said, his voice breaking. "When we got married, she convinced me to merge our finances. For simplicity, the Vale household reserve. That wasn't just her money, Claire. That was my inheritance. That was my portfolio. She's the primary signatory. I'm just on the account. She holds the bank cards. Claire. She pays the bills. She gives me an allowance every week, in cash. The confession was so staggering, so pathetic, that I couldn't speak. He wasn't just a coward. He was a prisoner. She makes me sign things, he continued, the words tumbling out in a rush of humiliation. Just like she did to you. It's for the taxes. Howard. It's for the mortgage refi. Howard. I don't even know what I've signed. She probably has power of attorney over me. He looked at me, a grown man, a partner at a firm, a father, and he looked like a terrified child. I can't get $3,000 without her transferring it, and she won't. Not now. Not after the account is frozen. I sat back in the booth, the legal case in my head shifting, recalibrating. This was a new variable. He wasn't just an accomplice. He was a co-victim, a willing one, perhaps, but a victim nonetheless. My anger, which had been a cold, hard stone, softened, not to pity, but to something else. A weary, profound disappointment. Then you have a much bigger problem than my lawsuit, I said, my voice quiet. You need to go to the bank, today, alone. You need to sit down with Mr. Davies and you need to revoke every single power of attorney you have ever signed. You need to report all your joint cards as stolen. You need to change every PIN you have. You need to lock your credit. And you need to hire your own lawyer, not me, a real shark of a divorce lawyer. Divorce, he whispered, horrified. You are not her partner, Dad, I said. You are her first mark. You need to protect yourself. As if on cue, the bell above the diner door chimed again. I didn't look up. Hello? Kellen? My father's head snapped up. Kellen Rhodes was standing there, in his sharp suit, looking profoundly out of place in the greasy diner. Howard, Kellen said. His voice clipped. You called me. You said it was an emergency. He looked at me. Ms. Rivera. I see I'm late to the negotiation. Kellen? Howard stammered, wiping his face. He can't pay, I said simply, saving my father from the explanation. Marissa controls his finances, completely. Kellen's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. He had seen this before. This was the kind of messy, toxic liability his family paid men like him to avoid. I see, he said. He looked at Howard. Howard, I am truly sorry for what has happened. I should have verified your wife's claims. My family's due diligence was lax. We were blinded by the presentation. It's all falling apart, Howard mumbled. The bell chimed again. This time, it was Aunt Miriam. She walked in, saw our booth, and came straight over. Claire, you texted. I'm here. She looked at Howard, then at Kellen. This is quite the party. Aunt Miriam, I said, you're just in time. You're the witness. I pushed the non-interference agreement back in front of my father. Dad, you're going to sign this, today. Right now. But the money, he whispered. I told you, I can't. I am amending the offer, I said. Kellen and Miriam were listening. This was now a binding, witnessed, verbal contract. The $5,600 is still owed, but I will waive the 5-day deadline. You will pay me in installments, as you can, free of interest, but that offer is contingent on this. I tapped the agreement. It's contingent on you signing this document, and it is contingent on you walking out of this diner and going straight to the bank and doing exactly what I told you to do. You will free your own accounts. I looked at him, my voice softening just a fraction. I am giving you the out, Dad. I am giving you the leverage. When she screams, you tell her you had to. You tell her you signed this agreement to prevent me from filing the lawsuit that would have exposed you both. You tell her I made you do it. I was giving him exactly what he always wanted a woman to blame. I gave him a final summary of the risks. This isn't just about my paycheck. The auto sweep was wire fraud. The fake email is a federal offense. The spam filter that blocked my job offer is tortious interference with a business contract. You are all exposed. This agreement, I tapped the paper again, is my one and only offer to make it go away. It is your only clean exit. Howard looked at Kellen, who just nodded once, grimly. He looked at Miriam, whose face was firm. He looked at me, his lawyer, his daughter, his adversary, his savior. He picked up the pen I had placed on the table. Where do I sign? I pointed to the line. He signed, Howard Rivera. His hand was shaking so badly it was barely legible. Aunt Miriam signed as the witness. Miriam Blake, witness. I took the original. I handed my father a copy. He folded it and put it in his pocket, as if it were a death certificate. I stood up, sliding my briefcase back onto my shoulder. I expect the first installment by the end of the month, I said. And one more thing. We are having one final dinner, this Saturday, back at the house. What? Howard looked horrified. Claire, no, I can't. You will, I said, my voice firm. We are going to finish this. This isn't a secret negotiation. This is a public closing. You will tell Marissa. Everyone will be there. We are going to close the books, formally. I turned and walked out of the diner, Miriam beside me. We stepped out onto the bright, cold Lakefield street. I took a deep breath of the free, smoggy air. You did it, Claire, Miriam said, squeezing my arm. You checkmated her. It's not over yet, I said, as if on cue. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was an email from Ann Bishop. Subject offer of employment. Wexler Hartwell. LLP. I stopped walking. Miriam looked at me. What is it? I opened the email. My eyes scanned the words, my heart seeming to stop and then restart, pounding. Pleased to formally offer you the position of associate in our litigation department. We were incredibly impressed with your interview and your credentials. A starting salary of $190,000. And a one-time signing bonus of $10,000 to assist with your transition. I read the numbers again. 190,000, 10,000. I looked up from my phone at the gray, unremarkable Lakefield street. It is now, I said. It's over. The second dinner was not a performance. The stage was gone. There was no fine china, no jazz, no candles. We were in the kitchen, under the harsh glare of the overhead lights, sitting around the cold granite island. It was just me, Howard, Marissa, and Tessa. Kellen had declined to attend, as had Aunt Miriam. This was not a reconciliation. This was a closing. The silence was heavy, funereal. My father, Howard, sat staring at his hands. Tessa was pale, her eyes red-rimmed and empty. All the fight gone. Marissa was a statue of pure, condensed rage. She was wearing a simple black sweater, as if in mourning for her own power. I had placed my briefcase on the island. I opened it and set the stage myself. First, I placed a small, folded piece of paper in the center of the granite. It was a bank receipt. This, I said, is the receipt, time-stamped this morning, for the transfer of $3,920 into my checking account. It is, as we agreed. Dad, 70% of the total $5,600 owed. The remaining 30%, $1,680, is to be paid in full within 30 days. This receipt confirms your compliance with the first term of our agreement. Howard nodded once, a tiny, miserable movement. Marissa's eyes flickered to the receipt, then back to me, her hatred a physical force. She hadn't known. He had found the money, liquidated something, borrowed it, it didn't matter. He had broken ranks. Second, I said, is the closing document. I slid a fresh, clean copy of the Agreement of Non-Interference onto the island. The one I had given my father was for him. This one was for the house. This is the family agreement. It codifies what we discussed. It prohibits any and all forms of shared funds or household reserves related to my personal income. It forbids any interference, of any kind, with my person, property, or employment. It outlines the $100,000 penalty for any breach. It is the price. I looked at all of them. For my silence, it is the document that keeps this entire affair out of a courtroom. I placed a pen on top of it. I need both of your signatures. Howard, you sign again, on the official copy, and Marissa, you sign. Tessa just stared at the paper. Howard looked like he was going to be sick. Marissa let out a sound. It was almost a laugh, a dry, cold puff of air. You are unbelievable, she whispered, her voice venomous. You come in here, after what you've done, after you destroyed your sister's engagement, after you froze my accounts, after you turned your own father against me. You come in here, with your smug, legal papers, and you think you can demand anything. She pushed the paper back toward me. I am not signing anything. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I had anticipated this. This was her last stand. I reached back into my briefcase. I was hoping you'd say that, I said. I was hoping you'd want to go to Discovery, so I brought the exhibits. I laid them out, one by one, in a neat row next to the agreement. Exhibit A, I said, placing a high-resolution glossy photograph on the granite. This is the forged signature from the power of attorney, a document examiner I consulted with, pro bono, called it clumsy and amateurish, easy to prove. Exhibit B. I laid down another paper. This is the printed IP log from my firm's IT department, confirmed by a preservation notice from your ISP. It shows the exact timestamp, to the second, that the spam filter was created from this house, on your computer, to block my job offer, a clear case of tortious interference. Exhibit C, I laid down the final piece of paper. This is the bank's final investigative report, the one that confirms the auto sweep was established using the fraudulent email, Claire R. Northbridge Home, and that they have classified the transfer as a criminal act. I looked up at her. I am not demanding you sign, Marissa. I am offering you a choice. You can sign this one, simple, private agreement, or you and I can take these 3 exhibits, and about a dozen others, and we can go downtown. We can present them to a district attorney. We can file the civil suit. We can let a judge and a jury of your Northbridge neighbors look at Exhibit A and Exhibit C and decide what to do. Your call. Tessa let out a small, terrified sob. Mom, just sign it. Be quiet. Tessa, Marissa snapped. I won't be quiet. Tessa suddenly shrieked, her voice cracking with a year's worth of suppressed panic. You don't get it. He's gone. Kellen is gone. He called me. He's invoking the financial infidelity clause in our prenup. He's not just postponing the wedding. Mom, he is canceling it. He's auditing everything. He said he's not signing a marriage contract until I am financially and ethically transparent. And it's all because of you. She was pointing at me, her hand shaking. You did this. You couldn't just let me be happy. Tessa, stop it, Howard mumbled, his face in his hands. No, Marissa said, her voice rising, seizing on Tessa's hysteria, trying to pivot the narrative one last time. She's right. You see what you've done, Claire. You see the pain you've caused. You selfish, hateful girl. You come in here with your cold, hard papers, and you're disrespectful. You have broken your sister's heart. You have humiliated your father. You have done this to your family. I hope you're proud. She was trying to make me the villain, to frame this as an emotional outburst, a tantrum, instead of a legal proceeding. I just looked at her. I didn't say a word. I reached into my blazer pocket, the one where I had kept my phone that first night. I pulled out my phone. I held it up. You're right, Marissa. This is about respect. This is about family. And this is about what you said. I pressed play. The audio file was cued to the exact moment. Marissa's voice, confident, condescending, and clear as a bell, filled the silent kitchen. I'm holding on to your first paycheck to help with upkeep. Think of it as your contribution to this lovely party. I'm holding on to it for you, really. It's an investment in the family. One day, you'll thank me for teaching you financial discipline. I let the last 5 words echo in the room. You'll thank me one day. I pressed stop. No one spoke. The sound of that single sentence, that one piece of profound, arrogant gaslighting, it just hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen out of the room. Tessa's weeping stopped. Marissa's manufactured rage collapsed, leaving only a hollow, defeated shell. It was over. The truth had won. My father, Howard, let out a long, shuddering breath. He reached for the pen. His hand was steady. He uncapped it, pulled the agreement of non-interference toward him, and signed his name on the line. It was a clear, firm signature, the signature of a man who had finally made a choice. Tessa just stared at the signed paper, then at her mother, her expression completely broken. Marissa looked at the signature. She looked at the exhibits. She looked at me. For a moment, I thought she might lunge at me. Instead, she just looked tired, utterly, completely defeated. She took the pen from Howard. Her hand was shaking, not with fear, but with a palsied rage. She signed her name, Marissa Vale, but she couldn't let it go. She couldn't let me have the clean win. As she signed, she spat out one last curse. One day, she hissed, her voice a low growl. You will understand. You will understand what I did for this family. You will understand the favor I was doing you. I capped the pen. I took the signed, original agreement and folded it neatly. I left the exhibits on the table for them to keep, a little souvenir of our time together. I put the agreement in my briefcase and snapped it shut. I stood up. I looked at Marissa, at her twisted, hateful, defeated face. I already understand. Marissa, I said, my voice quiet, but carrying in the dead silence. I understand the favor. You gave me the truth. I turned and walked out of the kitchen. I walked through the dark foyer. I did not look back. I opened the front door, the one I had walked through just 2 weeks ago, full of false hope, and I stepped out into the night. I wasn't surprised to see her. Aunt Miriam was sitting on the top step of the porch, nursing a thermos. She didn't say anything as I sat down next to her. She just poured a second cup from the thermos. It was hot. Sweet tea, and handed it to me. We sat in silence for a minute, the steam rising in the cold air. So, she said finally, is it done? It's done. I said. The hot tea felt good in my hands. They signed. Howard paid the first part. I'm proud of you. Claire. I looked at her. I feel empty. I feel like I just burned my own house down. Was it revenge? Miriam, did I go too far? Miriam looked out at the dark, manicured lawn of the house I would never enter again. No, honey, she said, her voice soft. Revenge is about hurting them. This, she nodded toward the house, was about healing you. This wasn't a bonfire. This was a controlled burn. You didn't do it to destroy them. You did it to clear out the rot, so you could finally build something new, for yourself, on clean ground. She put her arm around my shoulder and pulled me in. It wasn't revenge, Claire. It was redefining the boundaries, and you just drew a firewall they can never cross again. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A new vibration, not a text, a calendar alert. I pulled it out. It was from Wexler Hartwell. The subject, Welcome aboard, Claire. The alert read, Your official start date Monday, November 18th, 9:00 a.m. I looked at the alert. I looked at the dark house. I looked at the street lamp glowing at the end of the walk. A car's headlights swept across the lawn as it turned the corner, the beams catching the mist in the air, illuminating the path forward. I stood up. I was free. I had my money, I had a new job, and I had, for the first time in my life, paid my own way, in full. I walked down the path, into the light, and I never looked back. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm so glad I could share it with all of you. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I'd love to connect and hear your thoughts on this. Please subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it a boost by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.